2014 Ford Focus ST. It's 2014, and the knockdown, drag-out Middle East war has become a background hum for news channels. Easily ignorable, and as good a reason as any to switch your car stereo back to the auxiliary setting and listen to Joe Rogan more.
Another review of a new Ford, so notify all car message boards. Unless you've thought STs are not regular cars.
2 years prior, in 2012, the Ford Focus was the best-selling car in the Western world, finally upsetting the complacent Toyota full of more saltless baked potato truisms than a Grisham novel Camry. How could the Ford Focus not steal hearts and minds from Toyota Camry? Toyota Camry, a car which so perfectly represents your Presbyterian father's living room lectures on the straight and narrow. Oh, Christ, Dad's drinking Maker's Mark and he's starting to talk. Ugh, look, even the ST's face carries a permanent glower at the thought of this evening dragging on and on. Oh, he's pointing, isn't he? No. We as a country are tired. We're tired of all these austerity measures. Yes, we are fully aware of this war without end, amen, but does that mean we have to dwell on injustice with every conversation? Oh yeah, America's a horrible country, blah 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 blah, foreign countries, blah blah sand, predator drones and body armor, VA hospitals and the wealth gap. The Ford Focus ST delivers you from this colossal bummer that is modern news. We want fun again. You know what we want? We want forced induction. Why should compression be looked at as a treat for good times? Maybe it's an American thing. Maybe we like naturally aspirated cars so much because that's not cheating. But then look down the line at any car show and you'll see rows of Mustangs with turbines the size of dodgeballs. We want forced induction. Look at the Hyundai Veloster Turbo. It's got cheap torsion bar suspension in the rears, but nobody cares because so when you drive a Ford Focus ST, you don't need keys. Just keep the fob in your pocket, it'll start. Back under the rear hatch, you lift up the carpet and there's your spare tire like any other car, but right next to it is a bunch of cubby holes for your car knickknacks. When you open up the hood, all you see is plastic, and if you remove that plastic, you get to look at more plastic. The 2014 Ford Focus has a 2.0-liter EcoBoost 4-cylinder making 252 horsepower. That's about 50 more horsepower than the first Buick Grand National. The turbo peaks at 16 psi stock, and that's according to Ford's official press release when the ST was released in North America. The thing is, if you drive one of these things, you're not going to feel the boost until you get way up at the top of the rev range. This car is very benign when you're just driving it around. In fact, if you put this thing into 6th gear and cruise along the highway, you're barely above 2 grand. But there's one thing I take issue of, and it's the boost gauge. It's not a boost gauge. This is a novelty boost gauge. The boost gauge that Chrysler gave you in the Neon SRT4 was a real one because it showed vacuum and boost. It showed negative and positive pressure, and it's always bouncing around and moving around. This thing is electronic, so when you're not doing anything, it just sits. And even when you rev a little bit, it'll just sit. It's only when you really start making pressure does this thing lift off the peg. So it's just sort of a simulated boost gauge thing. You can tell I'm really stretching it here. I'm trying to find things that are wrong. Ford Focus ST, the official car of message board circle jerks. Oh yeah, one more thing. There's not even any numbers on this boost gauge. Yeah, it says 25 at the very end, but Parappa the Rapper marks would be more useful. All right. Is this car better than a Dodge Neon SRT4? Yes! It's tons better. It's a weird comparison to compare an SRT4 and a Ford Focus ST because you're comparing cars that are a decade apart. Maybe what you're looking at is what the Dodge Neon SRT4 could have been if they kept making it, because no one's complaining about build quality in the ST. Every panel fits. The brakes are amazing. And it's a car you can have if you just became a dad, because there's no way you can justify your RX-7 anymore. But you can justify this. It's a family car. Look, 5-door hatchback. It's a hatchback. Look at all this space space in the back, and you can, wow your significant other with how comfortable these seats are, and then slowly work into it. We should treat ourselves. We don't have to get the base model. Look at all this other stuff. They have this thing called the ST. I think it stands for supple trim or something like that, or special taste, or see, Tanya, it's a nice car. What are these dials up here? I don't know. Okay, here's the point I'm trying to make with the Ford Focus ST and how it loops into this whole I'm tired of the war and I just want to be happy thing. The Ford Focus ST is a representation of our rejection of everything that's supposed to be dim and gloomy about the 2000s. All we want is to go out on the road and have fun again. And that fits into this larger issue I want to talk about. The 2000 teens, or whatever you want to call this decade, is the new 1970s. Here's my reasoning. While cars in the 1960s enjoyed a great deal of freedom as far as design work is concerned, by the time the 1970s rolled around, they had to make do with a whole lot of new changes in regards to safety. That's why early 1970s cars don't look very good. The same thing in the 1990s. By the 1990s, we had learned to work within these confines of rules, and that's why we're looking back at the 90s, especially the early 90s, and seeing how beautiful cars looked in their minimalist, soft swooping lines like the Toyota Supra. But now that we have crazy pedestrian safety and gigantic massive A-pillars, the point of those is to keep the car strong enough if it flips over on its roof, it won't collapse in on itself. So cars now are looking kind of weird boxy. Even my grandmother said in a very funny conversation, she said, and my grandmother, she's 95, God bless her. She said, all cars look like trucks these days. And she's right. All cars have these boxy noses to them, just like the early 1970s. This is a topic that really could have a whole video on its own, so I'll just leave it at that.
And I'll get back to what's important.
It's time to shave my asshole.
Come to my window. I'll be home soon. 12 dicks on a dead man's skiff. Let me tell you about the presidency of Old Hickory.
My taint is bigger than my penis.
My fifth wife was infused with riboflavin.
We had a kid after she died.
Focus, we did before it was yellow as bushels of corn. It was small and curvy and looked kind of fat. This isn't that. Thank God it's an ST and not a focused STD, because I don't need another one of those. In the interest of full disclosure, wear a condom, y'all.
Okay, so torque steer. We're in third gear. Let me wait for the road to... I'll put the windows down in a minute. It's getting warm in here. Okay, so if I take my hands off the wheel.
Oh, yeah, it'll...
And... Yep, goes right.